Okay, so I think you're ready to go.
Hola Luis, ¿ya vamos a empezar o...?
Sí, ya. Hola. Listo, sí, ya. We're gonna start right now.
I see Andres is on.
Hola a todos. Seem to have a couple more people today.
Yeah, it looks like every time there's a few more people.
That's good. We're doing better on user engagement here.
I know.
Good engagement metrics.
Yeah. Hola.
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 Hola. Hello.
Annabelle?
Yes?
Okay. So, are we ready to start?
Okay, Jordan.
Okay. Agnes? I guess he's on mute.
There's Andres and Maria Angelica.
Yeah.
Two Andreses, right? No, same thing.
There's German Annabelle and Angelica.
Yes, today we are going to start with Andres, Germán, and Maria Angelica.
Herman.
Germán.
I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. Herman.
The other guy is busy now.
Herman. Herman, Annabelle, and Maria Angelica.
Yes.
Okay, I guess we got it. So, Herman, nice to meet you. We haven't met before.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. So, are you a developer or an artist?
Excuse me, who? Me? German?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you are an artist or a developer.
Yes, I am the artist.
Oh, the artist. Okay.
Artist.
Digital artist.
Digital artist.
Digital artist.
Great. All right, and I guess I don't know, Annabelle, if we had talked about your role. Are you an artist or a developer or something else?
No. I am CMO of the company.
Oh wow.
Yes, she's in charge of the marketing.
Okay.
I'm working on marketing right now.
Great. Okay. Thank you for letting us know that. I guess Radhika knew. I missed it somehow. So you're CMO.
I don't know. I would like to introduce the team.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we'd love that.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with Andres Felipe Tovar.
Yes.
So Andres Felipe is a designer. He is now working on different arts to different video games that we are working now. Also, Germán working with him. So he is designer too.
Okay.
Maria Angelica is a developer. She works in different projects and she try to develop different projects into the company. And me, I'm working on marketing now, so that's the team, right?
Great. So it's 4 of you.
Okay.
Yes. So just 4 of you, right? There's no one else?
No. We are 4 now. Yeah.
And what is the name of the company again?
Smart Soft Play.
Smart Soft Play.
Oh.
Smart Soft Play. Yes.
Right. Okay. Wow. So SmartSoft. That's the same as Hydro, right?
Yeah, I think you're involved with Hydro as well, right?
Yes.
Is Hydro a mentor, or is he part of the company?
Yeah. Hydro is the CEO.
CEO.
Oh,
CEO.
CEO. Ah,
Yes.
okay. All right. Now everything is clear.
She's the head of the team.
The team, and then the other Andres, because there are two Andreses, correct?
Yes, too. Andres is a game designer
Right.
too.
And then there's Andres, who is
He is CEO,
Mm-hmm.
chief game chief chief gaming officer.
Chief Gaming Officer,
Yes.
CGO.
CGO, yeah.
Yeah, Andres Felipe Tobar Ramirez.
Mm-hmm. And I think he goes by Andres Felipe.
Andres Felipe. Okay. So, Chief Gaming Officer. All right. I think that is now clear. And so, good. Thank you for introducing the team.
Okay, you're welcome.
And this is Smart Soft Play. Wonderful. And it's funny that we were also meeting with Jairo when we were there, and he's CEO.
Yes.
So, good. Very, very exciting. Now, we have a presentation for you today, and we're going to have more structure around the discussions. So what we will do for each meeting is we will start out the meeting with a presentation.
Okay.
And so the first week we had a presentation for the first session, and it was really about the global game market. And this week, because now we're starting the new week, on last Friday we talked a bit about the metrics and the analytics, but you know we weren't sure how much you knew about them, and it seems like these metrics are a newer concept, and so we put together a presentation around them, and we will focus this week on first what are the metrics, and then second, what are the best strategies around the different kinds? So what we'll do is we'll talk about the 4 different kinds of metrics: metrics for user acquisition, metrics for user engagement, metrics for user retention, and then metrics for monetization, because those are all the things that you need in order to create a successful game. So that will really be the focus of this week. In terms of the program, the following week we're then going to be talking about marketing strategy. So once you know the best techniques, well, what are the strategies to make the game go viral and generate the largest number of new users and getting the users engaged at a deeper level, not just
Right.
the analytics,
Right.
but in terms of campaigns. And Radhika, maybe you can talk a little bit about that because you'll be leading those sessions.
Well, mainly the idea is that we want to understand overall marketing strategy, what that would look like. So there's defining what the strategy is, finding out the different elements of that strategy, whether it's acquisition, whether it's retention. So this week we cover the metrics and the benchmarks, and the next week will be more so the focus on how to achieve those metrics, leveraging all of the different aspects. So, when you launch your game, as a product, what the business model, what would be, what the target audiences are, what are the platforms, any geographies that you need to think about in terms of monetization and so on, and then the channels of marketing and the campaigns that will be appropriate for those channels, the different types of engagement campaigns that you can run, and then measurement of those campaigns as well. And then we can also cover things like the ASO, App Search Optimization. We can look at the App Store as a distribution platform and how you can leverage the App Store, cross-promoting it in other ways, PR. I mean, there's so much that you can do in the marketing umbrella. So we're trying our best to try to cover the major aspects of an overall marketing strategy, and the individual elements of that marketing strategy to achieve the metrics that you desire.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So that will be very exciting, I think, for you, Annabelle, as a CMO.
Yes.
So the third week, so we've done 1 week, and that was about sort of the big picture. The second week is analytics and techniques for achieving those analytics from a high level. Then next will be marketing strategy. That will be next week. The following week will be U.S. operations, so things to keep in mind when moving into the U.S. market. The following week after that will be about Silicon Valley investor mindset, so how you need to think in order to excite investors, and it will be focused on the key things that investors think about, as well as the key things you need in your company in order to excite those investors. So it looks both sides, both the investor side as well as the entrepreneurial side. And then the last week is going to be focused on the key elements that you need for successful fundraising in Silicon Valley. And so it's like executive summaries, elevator pitches, investor presentations, and financials.
Yes, so this presentation is very consistent with we are working because we are working now in competitive intelligence. So all these kind of topics are consistent with the working we are doing, right?
Yes, it should be. It's all the things you need in order to be successful, not only in building out the company, but also in raising money. So it should be pretty standard.
Yes, okay.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm glad that we are, introduced, and we have, we're all on the same page.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to share my presentation with everyone, so that we can, take you through the presentation. So let me do that. I will screen share. So let me know when you can see my screen.
Okay.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Yes. I can see it.
Okay. All right. So, let me just play the slideshow.
I'm not sure if it's possible for, there's a person who has a lot of background noise going on, and I wonder whether we can have that person also mute in between.
Excuse me.
Can you see who's not muted, Radhika?
I'm not sure.
I think it's okay now.
Now it's better, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, I think I can still hear a little bit, but it's not as loud.
Much better.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the presentation on mobile game analytics. So we're going to be focused on 4 kinds of metrics. So user acquisition, like I mentioned. Now it's getting very loud again.
Annabelle, I'm sorry. Maybe there is ambient noise coming from where you are located at the moment. Is it possible to mute during the presentation when you're not speaking, of course?
Sorry, I can hear you. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm just saying, would it be possible to mute while Jordan is giving the presentation? There's a lot of background noise and sort of echo or feedback.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that's better. All right, thank you, because now we can hear. So user acquisition, user engagement, user retention, user monetization. And so we're going to go through each kind and talk about what they are, and also provide references. So we'll share this presentation with you so that you can click on the links and go out and look at the fuller articles, because we're going to be working two levels. One level is what are the key metrics so that you're familiar with the way people talk and think, and this is going to be important for any discussions you have in Silicon Valley with potential partners, with publishers, with investors. And this is the common terms that they use. We also want to give you benchmarks so that you're familiar with what the U.S. benchmarks or the global benchmarks are. So when you're looking at your own or you're talking to any of these people, partners and publishers and investors, you're in the right ranges, right? So the most important user acquisition metrics is a CPI, or cost per install. And this is important because without someone installing the app, it's not possible for them to be a user. They could obviously play on somebody else's device, but in terms of how how effective you are in terms of getting your game out into the marketplace, usually people are going to be playing it on their own mobile device, and so you want them to be installing your app on their device.
Porque como en la cámara me quise configurar al inicio qué tanto, digamos qué tanto tamaño va a tener, que me acopla.
Dorika, was that for us?
I'm not sure if, I think it's somebody new, Julian, that may have joined the call. I would request that if we could all mute while the presentation is going on, that would be a great way to move forward.
Unless, of course, people have questions.
Right, of course.
Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So the CPI.
Are you playing in slideshare mode, Jordan? Because it's still on the cover slide.
Oh, well, I have moved.
Yeah, it's not updating it, so you might want to move individually.
Yeah.
Slides. Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry. It's important. I don't know. So mobile game analytics. You can see this. Can you see the next slide?
Yes, now we see the key metric types.
Okay, all right. So user acquisition, user engagement, user retention, user monetization. Okay, so user acquisition metrics. So the cost per install, or CPI. Like I mentioned on Friday, this is usually in the range of $1 to $3. The cost per install has been increasing, and it's had a very large run up. So it's gotten much more expensive just recently. So this has now moved up to close to $3, so $2.73. And like I mentioned, during holidays, it can go even higher than that, so $4 to $7 per user. Keep in mind that it's the average user is paying less than $2 per month in most games, and so what this means is that it can take 2 months or 3 or even 4 months before your users actually become profitable. So if users are only playing for a couple of months in your game, it's possible, because the CPI is so expensive now, that you won't make any money ever from your users if they don't play long enough. So it's very important to not only be making money from the users, but you need to be making enough money, and they have to be playing long enough because the CPI is so high. And again, this is new. It used to be under $1. Now it's closer to $3 and can be a lot more than that. The cost per loyal user, I unfortunately don't have values for games. I have them for all apps. But what you can see is that a cost per loyal user, a loyal user is someone that opens an app at least 3 times. And On the CPI for Android is on average 131, and for iOS is 124. You can see that's less than half of what it is for games, because there are many different kinds of apps. And then this ratio of 150 to 130 is going to indicate that the cost per loyal user is going to be over $3. So it could be like 320, 325. So, you know, it's just installing is one thing, but having the user actually play, which is what you really want, is even more expensive. And the cost per launch, so that's the cost for the user to get them to launch again and again and again. So every time somebody is opening a game, it can cost like 13 cents on Android or 21 cents on iOS. Again, because of the ratio, that this is only about half for all apps versus games. These numbers are probably double for games and for mobile games. So you're looking at 25 to 40 cents just to get somebody to open an app a second or a third time. And so, how do you get someone to open an app? Well, you can do different things, which which I have on the next slide. But another important user acquisition metric are the user demographics. So that's, is user male or female? What's their age? How much money do they make in terms of, again, what's their age? And, are they making a lot of money or they're not making so much money? So these are the key user acquisition metrics, and I have some more slides on this as well. Before I move to the other slides, are there any questions on any of these? Okay. So let's take a look at another important area, which is user acquisition metrics by channel. So if you look at these different costs, these are averaged over all users, but it's usually important to understand which channel is doing well and which channel is doing better, than the other channels, because not all ways of acquiring users are necessarily equal. Some ways of acquiring users may prove to be more successful than others for your particular game. So one kind of user acquisition is just organic search. So people are searching. Maybe this is the one that has been very successful with the App Store in the past. Not so much now. But the idea was, if you were able to get into the top 25 or featured, then when people were searching for something new to play, they would find you more easily than if they don't know about you. So there's organic search where people are just looking for something, and maybe they'll find you. But if you're featured or you're in that top 25, it's quicker to find you, more people will find you, and so it can be more successful in terms of organic search. So that one, you usually, in a perfect world, wouldn't have to pay any money, but it turns out that to get into the top 25 quickly, usually you have to spend a certain amount of money to buy users, and so organic search isn't necessarily free. It can be, but it's not necessarily that case. So different approaches to organic search. Paid advertising is, like it says, you pay to advertise in the right places with the right groups, and there's all kinds of paid advertising. Many different kinds. There's offer walls. There's many different kinds of companies like Tapjoy and others that will come up with different strategies, and they gamify the whole experience of having people, download your game. So, for example, win an iPad if you download this game. Win something, be able to see something. So it's gamified advertising. There's also ways where people can play their game in an advertisement. It's like a playable demo. And that also leads to better engagement and better conversion. So paid advertising doesn't just need to be banner ads. It's gone significantly beyond that. And so, these are playable demos and offer walls and things of this nature. In-app referral. So, for example, a lot of companies that have multiple games, they will refer within an existing app another app. So you're playing one game, and then you can gamify that as well. You can say, hey, you'll get a certain amount of virtual currency or points if somebody goes and tries out another game. And this has proven to be quite successful. People, if they like your game, they're more often going to trust you and your taste in games. And so if you offer them another game, especially if you can provide some kind of gamified experience where they get something, if they do it, then that can lead to a good way of getting users to convert and download and install your game. Word of mouth is the best, right? It's totally organic, doesn't cost you anything, it's the cheapest, and it's because people really like your game, and it's kind of like Luis was talking about last time with Flappy Bird, where you had a blogger who had millions and millions of followers. He came out and he said Flappy Bird was not very good. But people got curious about it because he talked about it, and then they got thousands and thousands of new users for free, and so it's very inexpensive. So from a cost standpoint, the in-app referral, because you control that, and the word of mouth are the least expensive. Organic search can be inexpensive, but it typically costs money, and then paid advertising is the most expensive. It's usually called buying users, and this is why the CPI, cost per install, is so expensive, because people are usually having to pay to acquire new users. So if you want 1,000 new users, it's going to cost you probably $3,000. If you want 100,000 new users, it's going to cost you $300,000. So that adds up, because in most cases you're looking for a lot of users, as many as you can possibly get. Virality is then very exciting, and these two, in-app referral and word of mouth, if they can be successful, can save you a lot of money. Now, it's very important to track these metrics separately. So your CPIs for paid advertising, for in-app referral, for word of mouth are all going to be different. Because again, the cost for each one is different. And then you can see, if your word of mouth is very good, then you don't need to spend as much money. But if your word of mouth is very bad for some reason, then you might have to spend a lot of money in order to get people to pay, to play. So, and then, because there's a cost per launch, you might need to continue, like send emails or send text messages or provide further advertising to even, these days there's even TV commercials where people, are watching TV and they're reminded that they need to play a particular game. And so that's the cost per launch. The cost per launch is you can actually, within your game, if you've played something like Clash of Clans, you might be familiar that if you haven't played for a while, they'll just send you messages on your phone or on your tablet that you should be playing, right? And that's a less expensive way to remind people that they should play. Is that you just tell them, hey, your warriors need a leader, or it's been a while since we've seen you. Why don't you come back? Or your clan is missing you, for example. Different things like that. Or you have updates and let people know that there's an update or that somebody's been attacked, for example. But there's all kinds of different things that you can do to reduce the cost of launch. The biggest one is just to make your game very attractive, addictive, and then people just play it. Hi. Does somebody have a question?
Problems with my computer.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was understanding all that you was talking.
Okay. So do you have any questions about any of that?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. So now user demographics, we talked about this previously, but different kinds of games have different demographics. So it's not just, male or female, but it's also the average age. And what you can see here is a game like Solitaire, which has been very popular for a long time. It's mostly female, and it's an older female demographic. If you look at social turn-based, it's also mostly female, and it tends to be an older demographic as well. I think, like on Facebook, it's closer to like 37 for social turn-based. The endless runners, like what Luis has, tends to be a younger demographic, but you see that they're mostly in the 18 to 44 kind of range. That's, this idea that mostly kids are playing games is not really very accurate. Kids do play games, obviously, but the demographic that's the most important, because they can usually pay for games, is the 18 to 44 cohort. So 18 to 44 is really the range that most people shoot for. You can see that the ones, like we said, that are more action and maybe fighting oriented tend to be more male. And then the ones that that are more management, sim, social turn-based, even endless runners, they're all female. And like we had mentioned last time, female users actually monetize better than male users. And so if you want female users, then these are the best places or the best kinds of games to make. Adventure would probably also be more over here as well, but it may be more neutral. So these are some things to keep in mind regarding user acquisition. So before we move to the next, which is user engagement, any questions about user acquisition metrics? Okay. All right. So hopefully that is pretty straightforward. All right. So user engagement. Well, these are pretty much the most popular and the most well-known metrics. So MAUs, monthly active users, DAUs, daily active users, you typically want these to be above 50,000 for daily actives, above 100,000 for monthly actives, in order to draw interest from investors, interest from publishers. If you have less than this, it's not really that exciting for anybody who wants to partner with you. So these are sort of minimum numbers that you want to shoot for. The DAU to MAU ratio is also known as stickiness. So if you have a lot of people from your total who are playing, that means it's a pretty sticky game. and if it's greater than 40% for most games, like an adventure game, that's considered to be good. Puzzle games tend to be more like 20%, and it can get as low as 10%. But again, in order to be interesting, you really want to have around 40%. Another engagement metric is not just is somebody playing, but how long. You know, are they playing for 5 seconds? Are they playing for a minute? Are they playing for 10 minutes? An hour? So how long is the not necessarily a session, because there's also session length, the number of sessions, and sessions per DAU, but it's really the total amount of time that they're playing. Some games, like maybe an adventure game, it might have very low session numbers because each session could be quite long. An endless runner tends to have maybe a couple-minute session length, so you can have a lot of sessions in a day. But an adventure game, it might take you 30 or 40 minutes to play one session. So maybe you only have 1 or 2 sessions. So the number of sessions per day could be low, lower than for an endless runner, but the session length is longer. And so for that, the average time spent per day could be quite good. Because even though someone may have 3 or 4 sessions in an endless runner, they might only play 6 or 7 minutes, whereas they might have 1 session in an adventure game and play for 30 minutes. So these all are how engaged are the users. You know, how many are there? How sticky is your app? And how much time? How many sessions are they playing? So hopefully that is pretty self-explanatory. This gives an understanding of, you know, how long people play. You can see here an adventure game, it is the most, right? It's like 2.35 minutes. So it's not 30 minutes, for example, but it is longer than the others. So it's the longest of all of them. And that's good because if you look at, as we'll be going through here, engagement is directly related to monetization. So the longer that somebody is playing, the longer the session length. Usually that means that they're going to invest not only more time, but more money. So adventure is a good category. Simulation, another area, has a shorter session length, but it's still, you know, significant, 1.5 minutes or 1.3 minutes. So that's simulation versus adventure. So those are the key metrics, and this is, you know, time by genre. So any questions on user engagement? Okay, so let's move on. So we've talked about user acquisition, we've talked about user engagement. What's also important is user retention. So, you know, you can acquire a lot of users, but if they all leave quickly, you're not really gaining very much, and you might be spending a lot of money to acquire those users, but they only install and then they're not loyal. And so what will quickly happen is you're going to run out of money because the users are not, you know, being retained. So user retention is a very important metric. Some people actually say it's the most important because it allows you to have an active community, and then once you have an active community, you can actually monetize. So the key retention metrics are day 1, day 2, day 7, and day 30. There can be day 2, day 29, day 15. You know, different systems in terms of metrics. For example, will give you different dates that you can look at. So, for example, Press Start uses day 2 and day 29, and also day 15. But in the industry, there's usually D1, D7, and D30. And for an average game, if you look at across all games, usually 2/3 of the players leave on day 1. So you spend all this money, for example, to gain new users, and you lose 67%, almost 70% on the first day. So keep in mind, each of those users was $3, and so if you started out and you had 1,000 users that you purchased, well, now you only have 330 after just the first day. You lose almost 700 users out of 1,000. 1 week later, you lose about half of those on average. So, again, you lose another 50%, and then at the 30th day, you're losing another 50%. So you're down under 10% of users after 30 days. 90% of users have typically left in an average game. So these are really the core users. And those are the ones that you have to draw upon to monetize, because there's nobody else. All the other people have left. So for a good game, the stats are a bit better. You still have the same ratio, which is a 50% drop after 1 week, and a 50% drop in the 30th day. So these are more loyal users, but still you lose half of them in another 23 days. And you can see the stats are a little bit better. If you look at Press Start with Drive Me Bananas, their stats are great, compared to both good and average. They have almost a 50% day 2. Day 2, even better than day 1. So they have a 49%. It drops to 30%, so that's not half. They're keeping 60% of the users. Of the ones that stay after the first day to day 7, and then at day 30 they're at almost 20%, so they're like double the number of users for a good game. So that tells you that Press Start has made a good game, actually a great game by these metrics, and they should be able to get significant monetization because a big percentage of their users are being retained. So any questions on user retention metrics?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that generalized for all kind of games?
Yes, this is across.
Or for a specific, I don't know, like category or something?
Yeah, that's a good point. This is a little bit hard to read. Unfortunately, it's the best graphic that I found. And what this does is it breaks out the game retention and sessions per week just for Android. This is from Flurry. And, it shows also male and female. So there's a lot of information in here. But you can see this is about 30-day retention. And so, for example, they don't have adventure game here, but let's say here's an endless runner. So an endless runner on Android is about 10 sessions per week. This is right here. And what they're saying is the 30-day retention rate is quite high. So you can see that it's around over 40%. So the best endless runners, can be much higher than what Luis has. And so it's a genre that actually has a pretty high retention rate. The average, if you looked across these, would be more like here, right? So it's going to be more like the 25% or something like that. And but this gives you a good understanding of when you look at it at a particular genre, you can see that Luis can actually do better here because the 30-day retention rate for endless runners tends to be quite high. Management sims have a lower retention. They have more sessions. Social turn-based games can have many, many sessions per week and over 30% retention. So this gives you, by game genre, what your 30-day retention should be. Solitaire, interestingly enough, is kind of has the best. It's sort of mostly female and nearly a 50% retention after 30 days. So does that answer your question, Annabelle?
It's Angie. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Angie?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
No.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay. You can see also they have.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I have a question. I have one question.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if I understand good, but at the is to the last present date, I don't know how to say, diapositiva radica. ¿Tú me puedes colaborar cómo se dice diapositiva?
Slides.
Flight, the last flight, the eighth flight. Can you return to this slide? Okay, thank you. In this topic, I would like to know which of these dates that you was talking is the most important that you can consider.
Well, in order to monetize, you really need
Yes.
users to stay around, right? So what would be good is if you have a high D30, right?
Okay.
If you have a lot of users at the beginning, they're just starting to get to know the game, and so it's unlikely that they're going to be spending a lot of money on the game. They need to understand the game. Like usually when I play a game, if I'm playing the game after a couple of weeks, it means I like it, and now I might start to want to spend some money on it. So,
Okay.
so you really want to have as high a number over here as possible, because having high numbers here, though it might be exciting, it's probably not going to lead to monetization.
Okay.
So you want to try to maximize, your D30, and that's why in this graph they're showing D30.
Yes. Okay. And this is the day when you um, do all the metrics, and you yes, and you do all the metrics,
Well, this is really tracking each user. So
or it depends.
you look at each user and you say, for user number 1, did they stay 1 day? Are they still there after 7 days? Are they still there after 30 days?
Okay.
This is what percentage of your users are staying for 30 days or more. So it's not looking at it's not saying like you launch the game and 30 days later how many people are still playing. It's really from your user base how many people are playing for 30 days. Because
Okay.
30 days from when you launch the game, some users might have just started on that day, so they've only played 1 day. You have others that started the day before. So you have the whole range of 1 to 30 days of play. But here you're only interested in how many players, what's the percentage of players that have played a full 30 days on your game.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that's user retention, and again, this is very, very important, and the reason it's so important is because the longer people play, the more likely they are to monetize. Okay, so let's take a look at monetization. That's probably the most important topic, because you can have really good user acquisition, you can have really good engagement, and you can have really good retention, but if nobody is spending any money on your game, it's not a business, right? And you really need to turn your game into a business, and in that way, investors will get excited about it, and you can grow a game and make it really big, and if you have a very loyal community, it's most likely that you're going to convert and have people pay. But the question you don't know is, what is the conversion rate? So let's go through some of these. So the most typical thing you'll hear is ARPU. That's just the average revenue per user. And like I mentioned, that's around $2 per month right now across all games. But as I'll show you, it varies, by game genre, like you'd expect. Like I don't actually have the numbers here, but if we look at this next value, ARPDAU, it's the average revenue per daily active user. So this is usually something around 5 cents. This is about 6.5 cents per day. And what you can see is if you multiply this by 30, you come up with about $1.96. So what you do to get this is you average the daily revenue over 7 days, and then you divide by the average DAU over 7 days. So it's a calculated value which is averaged over a 7-day period. You can also do an ARPDAU that's over different periods, but typically it's calculated over a 7-day period to kind of smooth things out. You might have a launch, there may be a power outage, maybe there's something happening politically. So to kind of smooth things out, because people get distracted, usually you calculate your ARPDAU over a 7-day average period. The average revenue per paying user is very important. That's your ARPPU, and that is really taking into account only those paying users. And the conversion rate is the percentage of users paying. Usually the percentage in North America is like 5%. That's like a normal kind of conversion rate for a game. In Asia, it's more like 3%, so fewer people pay in Asia. Now, they usually make up for the fewer people paying because there's a lot more users. So if you look at games over in Asia, there's just a lot more people, and so because there's more people, they can get more players, and because there's more players, you can have a lower conversion rate, but you can still make more money than you would in, say, North America or South America, where the population is not as high. So keep that in mind. Even though you might have a low conversion rate, if you have high population, it may be okay. You can still make a good amount of money. So another important value is lifetime value. And lifetime value is pretty complicated. Lifetime value, it's hard to calculate because until you have people playing the game for a while and you figure out how long people play, it's hard to know how much people are really spending over their lifetime. Because is the lifetime 2 months? Is it 3 months? Is it a year? Is it 5 days? And this is very important because if your lifetime value is lower than your CPI, or your cost per install, there's no way you can ever become profitable because the users aren't giving you back as much money as you paid in order to get them to install. So it's very important that your LTV is much higher than your CPI, and so that's really what you're trying to do. Is you're trying to retain as many users as you possibly can for as long as possible, and you're trying to maximize conversion so that as many as possible of those people that are retained are paying, and then you want to make your ARPPU as high as possible. So these are the things, and what has happened is there's been a lot of strategies which are driven towards finding what are called whales. Whales are those people that are at the there's different ranges for ARPPU. What you'll see in very sophisticated KPIs, very sophisticated metrics, is they'll actually break the ARPPUs into different bands, and so you won't just necessarily have one ARPPU. You'll have an ARPPU for the top 5%, or the top 1%, because maybe that top 1% is 80% of your revenue. Just because your ARPPU is averaging, say, $30, you might have people on the high end that are paying 1,000. Maybe in the top 1%. So maybe you want to run campaigns for these whales because, the more they pay and the longer they stay, it's going to keep your ARPPU very high. And then you can have maybe a mid-band with people that are paying maybe $60 or $100. And then you have maybe people on the low end who are paying like $5. And so you might run different campaigns for different bands. And, there's going to be, people will give them names. So, call them whales at the high end. There might be killer whales, which are smaller than whales. You might have sharks, dolphins, tuna, guppies, all kinds of different fish for the different ranges. And then you can run different programs for these different kinds of users to try to increase how much they pay. Something that you do for a whale is not necessarily going to be interesting to a shark because maybe a shark pays $50 a month and a whale is paying $1,000. If you run some campaign to get people to spend an extra $100, that's a lot more than a shark is going to pay, so it's not going to attract them. So these are some things to keep in mind, is that when you get very sophisticated in terms of understanding your user base, it can then lead into marketing programs that target them. Sometimes things happen where the whales are targeted with new builds and new features, and it's very good in terms of monetization, but then maybe overall your users get very upset because you come out with all these new features but nobody can afford them. And I've seen that happen in games where there's some new capability but nobody cares except a very small fraction. And then after a while, people start to complain that the developer only cares about the paying users and doesn't care about the free users or the ones that are paying less. And so you have to be careful that your game doesn't get a bad reputation of just being money focused. And so just like you will rebalance a game in terms of the rewards that people get and what people can do in the levels, and in terms of how the different levels compare with each other or the different roles in a game. You also need to be careful on how you monetize, that you don't just focus on the whales. But if you don't focus on the whales at all, you're not going to make any money, because the whales really carry a huge percentage of the monetization. Just keep in mind, only a very small percent of the users are actually paying. So any questions about that? Okay. So user monetization by genre. The top three, and I showed this before, but strategy, trivia, and adventure, all around 18 times arcade. So again, adventure is very good. Simulation is only 7, so it's less than half. So an adventure monetizes well in terms of the most numbers of in-app purchases. So doing something in this kind of area is very, very good. So is family, but you can see after role-playing it really drops off pretty fast. And these have very low conversion rates. So in a puzzle game, you might have like a 3-cent ARPDAU, whereas with a trivia game or a strategy or an adventure game, it might be 12 cents or potentially even higher. So keep that in mind, that these are really the best genres for monetizing. You can make up for this difference in monetization just through numbers of people. So if you can get a lot more people playing a puzzle game, even though it monetizes at only a small fraction of an adventure game, if you can get 10 times the number of people playing it, you can still make more money with a puzzle game than an adventure game. So it really comes down to the numbers and how many you acquire and how many stay, how long they play. All of these things work together in terms of turning your game into a business. Any questions about that? Okay.
No, it's fine.
All right, good. All right, so user monetization trends. This is important, to understand. Like I mentioned, just recently there's been a huge run-up in CPI, and this actually makes it harder for games to become profitable and for companies to become businesses. So what you can see is this was the holiday time. So it doesn't necessarily stay here, but at the holidays, there's a huge increase in the cost. That being said, there's still a gap, between mobile ARPPU and the CPI. So CPI is increasing faster than ARPPU is increasing. And so you have to try to figure out ways to get more users without just doing paid advertising, because paid advertising is getting more and more expensive. So, and keep in mind, the only way you become profitable is if your ARPPU is, significantly higher than your cost per install. Now, if you look at the ARPPU values, US mobile games actually are pretty low. They're kind of the lowest in the world, but it's still a very good market. The highest in the world is, surprisingly, the Middle East, like we talked about in one of our previous sessions. You get people that are in the oil-rich countries, and you can see that their ARPPU is like $270. That's like, 13 times what they pay in the U.S. But keep in mind that there's a lot fewer of these. There's not as many. The Arab oil-rich countries, they don't have that many users playing, but they do have, they do spend a lot of money. I know I was speaking with a friend about one of his games, and he was talking about, some whales that they had in the Middle East. And
Jordan?
Yes.
Excuse me, what is MENA?
That's Middle East and North Africa.
Middle East and North Africa. Okay, thank you.
And so it's, just a very high. There was I was speaking with him about some of the whales that he had, and he said that the whales, they actually broke out into different categories because they had sort of, whales in Europe and whales in the US, but then they had whales in the Middle East, which were in a completely different category. And they had one user who spent, like over a few month period, he spent almost $100,000 on a game. And so it's not to say that this is common, but you can have some users that are very fortunate to have. You're very happy that they are spending as much money as they are, and it can be very significant. It could be, they might be able to buy cars or houses or apartments in your country, but they're just paying for virtual items in your game. So this is a good market to find whales in. Europe, China, US are kind of in a similar range, but the US is actually has a lower ARPPU in general. And again, China is a good market, but keep in mind that the conversion rate is higher in the US than in China. So even though they might have a higher ARPPU, they have fewer users percentage-wise. But again, the base may be higher. So any questions on that?
No, we are good.
Okay. So this one is, again, monetization and engagement. So, high engagement level leads to higher monetization. You can see there's a line, which pretty much goes like this, which shows, and adventure is actually the highest engagement and one of the highest for in-app purchases. So it's a good genre to be focused on. And then this is just kind of an overlay of the average daily session length and the propensity for in-app purchases, and again showing the same thing. Strategy, trivia, and adventure are your best genres. They have the longest session lengths, the highest engagement, and the highest propensity for in-app purchases. Keep in mind you can also have advertising as another way of making money within your game. We'll talk more about in next session on Friday about the different monetization strategies and how to monetize, and basically the techniques that get used for user acquisition, for user engagement, for retention, and for monetization. So that's the presentation for today. Looks like we have around 20 minutes, so I'm very happy. Both Radhika and I are happy to take any questions on that. And we can send you this presentation as well.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Sure.
All this information we are gonna work to take decisions in different ways that we are working. So, thank you so much.
Yeah. Was there anything in the presentation that you might have any questions on, or that didn't make sense, or that you would like to go in, have us go into more detail on?
Sorry, I can hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying, are there any sections of the presentation as they might apply to your own game that you have any questions about?
No. All is clear. I don't know if... no sé si ustedes, chicos, tengan otra pregunta.
No, maybe that would be good to have the presentation shared on the folder on Google Drive.
Okay. Fine.
Okay, thank you.
Radhika, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think this was pretty complete, so I have nothing further to add. But we will be talking about the same kinds of metrics, but more of an implementation and strategy of on the marketing side and campaign side next week.
Okay, perfect.
Is Luis on? Luis, do you have any points that you would like to add?
Let's see if I can.
Let me.
I don't know that I saw that Luis had any comments. So.
Yeah. Okay. So if there aren't any further questions, what we can do is we'll put the can someone send the link for the folder, and we'll just put the presentation into the folder so that you can look at it. And then next week, sorry, on Friday, next session, if you have questions, we can start with those questions, and then we can go more into.
Hola.
I think Luis had some final comments.
Hola.
Oh, Luis, hi. It was. Are you there?
Jordan,
Yes.
I am sharing with you the link
Thank you.
to
Okay.
the folder.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much. I will. Sounds like there's
There's a construction going on or something.
or a dog or something. So, Luis, did you have any comments?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right. So I'll stop sharing then. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this was a good session, and we'll just follow up on Friday.
Okay, thank you, Jordan.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for
Bye.
Hasta viernes.
Okay,
Bye.
hasta el viernes.
See
Gracias,
you.
Raika.
Okay, gracias, Raika.
Mucho gusto. Adiós.
Nice to meet you.
Adiós.